Hi there, and welcome to another Theology Thursday. It's interesting, we have 4 biographies of Jesus: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. However, we really have 3 biographies and a theological discussion of Jesus' life. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called the synoptics, and that just, syn means like together, like synchronize, and optic means to look. So they look at Jesus' life the same way. They just pretty much tell it chronologically. John, on the other hand, gives a lot of theological discussion about Jesus. I mean, his book starts off very, very theological. Because of that, there are not a lot of things that we find in all 4 Gospels. Now, the last week of Jesus' life, the upper room, the trials, the crucifixion, the resurrection, those do occur in all 4 Gospels, obviously because of the most significant, important things that Jesus did. Matter of fact, they take up around 40% of the Gospels, and so they are very, very significant. We only have one miracle that occurs in all 4 Gospels, and that is the feeding of the 5,000. And we have a few events other than the crucifixion and resurrection that occur in all 4 Gospels, but not a lot. One of those, though, is the cleansing of the temple. But what's interesting is John has the cleansing of the temple at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. Matthew, Mark, and Luke have it at the end, which would indicate that there were 2 times that Jesus cleansed the temple. John gives us the first one. The other 3 give us the last one because they're all right near the end of Jesus' ministry before he's going to be crucified. So I want to look at John's, and then we'll look at the other one. And the other ones come with the one I want to talk about. So in John chapter 2, starting in verse 15, the Bible says, "The Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers sitting there. He made a whip of cords, and making whip cords, he drove them all out of the temple and with the sheep and oxen. He poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, 'Take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of trade.' His disciples remembered that it was written, 'Zeal for your house will consume me.'" So the zeal for your house is found in Psalm 69:9. And so that's the reference that's used in John. And the focus in John is driving out of the animals. So that's important. It mentions the money changers, but the main focus is driving out the animals, those that sell the animals. He says again, you made a house of trade, those doing the pigeons. There's a heavy emphasis on the animals. We could look at the other, I don't want to look at all 3 of them. It occurs in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. But I want to look at Mark's version. I had to pick one, so I picked Mark's. They're all very, very similar. So Mark says this in chapter 11, "And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. He would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, 'Is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers?' The chief priests and the scribes heard it and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching." When he came, they went out of the city. Mark puts kind of a balance between the money changers and the animals. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all 3 of them, there is no mention of a whip being used to drive out anybody or to drive out the animals or anything. And the reference in John is to Psalm 69:9. The reference in Matthew, Mark, and Luke is all to Jeremiah chapter 7, what's called the Temple Sermon, and specifically verse 11, "Making my house a den of robbers," or a den of thieves. So we need to talk about what in the world was going on when we were here, when Jesus was here, and why he was driving them out, and what the problem is. But first, let me deal with the "not make my house a den of robbers." Robbers would go out, wait, and when they saw a small group of people traveling, would pounce on them, beat them up, or sometimes kill them, take their wealth, and then go back to their den, back to their caves, so that they would wait until the authorities had quit looking for them. And so that became the hideout. And what Jeremiah said is that they go out and sin all week, and then they come in and think, well, we're in the temple, so it's okay. And so that's kind of what Jesus is getting at. Like, well, we're in the temple, so what we're doing is okay. It's not actually a focus on the robbing people part. It is the mentality of what we're doing is okay because it's in the temple. That's why Jesus makes this reference to Jeremiah. But let's talk about what was going on. It helps us understand why Jesus was upset and kind of why we even have people selling pigeons and stuff. So let's talk about the money changers first, then we'll talk about the animal sellers. So in Jesus' day, pretty much everybody used Roman coins. That would make sense. They were part of the Roman Empire. Roman coins would spend everywhere. So they used Roman coins. However, the law required that you pay a temple tax that you had to pay when you would come to the temple. And that was a half shekel. Well, most people, because they had Roman money, didn't have shekels. So when they would get to the temple, they would go to the exchange booth, just like if you go into a foreign country and you go up to booth to exchange to their currency. They would give some Roman coins in exchange for the half shekel. They would use that to pay the temple tax in the half shekel. Well, as you can imagine, there were people that set up business doing this, and they were making quite the profit off of it. And Jesus isn't condemning them because they were making a little bit of profit. I mean, this is a business, but they were gouging them. They were extorting them because this was like the only place they could get the half shekels. So basically, these money changers could change whatever they wanted, charge whatever they wanted. And so it was an extremely lucrative business, as you could imagine. And so that's why Jesus is overturning the tables of the money changers. And I could hear them saying, but we're providing a ministry. People can't pay the tax if we don't provide this. I get that. And it's okay. Again, even to make some profit would not have been a problem if this was just profit to make a living. But they're becoming rich. They literally are taking advantage of people. In the modern America, we call it price gouging. And there are laws against it. And so that's what we're talking about that they were doing here. Now let's talk about the animal sellers. So if you lived a long way from Jerusalem and you want to come and make a sacrifice at the temple, it's difficult to bring animals that far, difficult to carry birds and pigeons and doves and things like that. And it's also difficult to get them on, if you're taking, a 4, 5, 6, 8-day journey, to get the animals there and them not pick up some kind of injury or something, and you were supposed to offer something without blemish and without spot. So what they would do is when you got to the temple area, there were people that would sell animals. They would sell larger animals like calves and sheep and goats, but the primary were the birds. That was the primary method of offering a sacrifice was birds. And so they would offer them. Matter of fact, we've discovered a number of these, archaeologists, all over the Jerusalem area, really all over Israel, but this is called a dovecote. And a lot of families had them because they would raise them because then they could eat them. They could raise birds in these. But there are a lot of large ones like this around Jerusalem. And they're like from the time of Jesus. And they would raise these doves and then they would bring them to the market and they would sell them. Once again, they are providing a ministry. What they were doing was not bad. The problem is the same that was with the money changers. They are abusing people. They are taking advantage of people. They are way overcharging because there's nowhere else for someone to get one of these doves, like to bring an offering to the Lord. And so Jesus is not against people making a living while doing ministry. I mean, sometimes you can't do ministry full time unless you are making some money off of it. I mean, I'm a case in point. I'm a full-time pastor, and so I do ministry, all the time. But I mean, if I didn't get paid by the church, I'd have to cut out a lot of that ministry and get a job somewhere working to, support my family. But gouging people, no. And you already see where this is headed. We have a lot of people like this in our world today. They try to convince people, if you'll give me money, they're manipulating people. They don't really price gouge them, but they manipulate them into giving them lots of money. And you have pastors who are living exorbitantly. And I don't have a problem with a pastor that lives an exorbitant lifestyle if he has earned that lifestyle elsewhere. So if he's written some books and the books have sold well and he's made money and he's bought a big house and nice cars, that's great. Matter of fact, some guys have actually, that's what they live on, and the church doesn't pay them anything, and they still continue to pastor the church, which is, fantastic. David A. Criswell was the pastor of First Baptist, Dallas, Texas for 40 years, and he wrote some books and made some real estate investments, and one of his great joys is that when he retired, he wrote a check to the church for the entire amount of the salary they had paid him over 40 years. He said, I wanted to say that I had served the Lord at no cost to the church. So, yes, there are some pastors that are very well off because of those kind of things. And they've made, or maybe their family has money and they still own a part of the family business somewhere and they still get money or they've inherited money or whatever. So the issue is not what kind of car they drive or whatever, or maybe they have a spouse that makes a lot of money. I mean, but if you are manipulating the congregation to give because you tell them you'll get rich if you give, and look, I'm rich because I've given, and you're manipulating people, that is a violation of what's going on here. You're taking advantage of people, and that's what they were doing here, and that's why Jesus cleanses the temple. Now, I do want to just point out one more thing. Jesus was not opposed to temple worship, wasn't opposed to sacrifice, wasn't opposed to all that, to the temple tax that was required by the law. Like, Jesus didn't oppose any of that. So this was not an opposition to the temple or temple kind of worship. This was an opposition to taking advantage of other people, especially in a location like this, in the temple, where they've turned it into a place, well, it's got to be okay because we're in God's temple providing a ministry. But for them, it wasn't a ministry. If it was a ministry, they would have charged enough to live on, but not enough to become wealthy by abusing other people. So this is why Jesus drives them out of the temple. I think it's a great lesson for us in the way we understand money and ministry and all of those kind of things. So, let's be faithful. We're going to be faithful, but not take advantage of people. Particularly don't take advantage of people in the name of the Lord. Or you may find yourself driven out by Jesus, whether by his voice or by whip, either one. So God bless you, and I hope that you have a great day.